it's very cliche, but it is true. Like, success does leave clues.
Yeah.
And if you're not taking that into account, like, again, a lot of it can be genetic sort of components. Often the people who do well, they have got very good genetics. Like, that's a big part, but also you can't just use that as an excuse to ignore, you know what I mean? Like, so like if they're all doing a lot of the same kind of things in terms of maybe not getting that heavy in the off season, maybe their training is, let's say, maybe they've got a bro split.
Yeah.
Like, that's something that you think, wow, all the people that were the top guys in the WNBF or in this or in that were doing a bro split.
Yeah.
That is something that you need to take into account. Like, I think people often go, almost neglect what
I'm doing my shit and I'm doing it well, so I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, which is great.
like...
But I think, you know, like how people will go, well, this is what Ronnie did, and then people like laugh about that and go, oh, that's fucking stupid.
Yeah.
And I get that because it's Ronnie Coleman, but also like you got to think there is going to be some warrant behind like what the most successful athletes are doing. Yeah. You can't just go, oh, fuck that, it's just, they're all just genetic freaks. A lot of them are very, very good genetically, but they're also probably doing things well.
I bet like if the average individual lived with like peak Ronnie Coleman, was eating like 7 meals a day, training as hard as he was,
they would make
loads of progress, and they'd be like, oh shit, even though studies only say I need 4 protein synthesis spikes per day, and maybe I can be in the gym for 60 minutes and 90 minutes. So it's like, oh, you just go in, trash yourself, eat a lot of food, sleep a lot, you'd probably be actually making far more progress.
I think it is like nowadays it's just everything's overanalyzed, and like the amount of times in check-ins where like people will ask us like questions about like the minute details, but then they're like, oh, so I missed 2 sessions this week. It's like you've just asked about like the smallest thing, or like something in regards to nutrition. Like they'll be asking about a specific food and the micronutrients that it contains, and then they're like in the next sentence like, so my sleep's been shit, and it's like, what? Like, you're not doing the basics right. Like, if you're not doing the basics right, those small percentages they don't make any difference at all. They make no sense to even question them. Like, if you're not getting a good amount of sleep every night, if you're not training really, really hard, like, again, you see it all the time. Like in gyms nowadays, most people, I would say, are just more bothered about training really accurately than training hard. Definitely. And it's like you kind of need to do both. Like we've always said, when we were training like idiots, like we learned a lot from that, because it was like, we actually know how to train stupidly hard now. And we forget, like when I trained with Owen, won't mind me saying, when I trained with Owen on Saturday, like he was like, I was like jokingly calling him a pussy with like some of the things that he was doing, but then I also forget, like,
you've done that before.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But also like that's quite normal.
It's completely normal, but I forget that, like for me, if we were to go and train right now and do 10 sets and just take them all to failure, past failure, with partials, with force reps.
Length and partials?
Length and partials.
So hypertrophic. I'm just grown saying that.
We wouldn't be like throwing up.
No.
We'd just be like, fucking hell, that was a good session.
Oh yeah, but when somebody...
But if you do that for someone else, they're throwing up. They can't train for the next 3 days. And even the people
that you think like train hard, but it takes time.
Yeah,
you know,
it is a skill.
Yeah, it is. And it's like kind of that, the setting the standards of like, a leg press, for example, I don't know. I know you trained with Owen, you've replaced me for that session, cheers. But let's say, for example, he was to do a leg press. He's probably maybe 2 or 3 reps away from failure. To the average individual, like let's say a Premier, like, they'd be like 6 set. Yeah. The reason why I say that, literally the other day, Jordan Jallen was spotting, who's the classic dude he's doing a prep this year? Ollie Marsden. Yeah, and Ollie did a set where he probably had maybe 1 or 2 in the tank, and Jallen was like, mate, fucking wicked set. And like Sanaya literally was like, you had about 2 more left. But I'm not saying to them as I'm not talking like, down upon them. To the average individual or to people that even compete and stuff like that, that's sound. But
I think perceived failure versus true failure are two very different things.
It was a good set. It was a decent set. Like, that's better than a lot of people. But again, like with somebody where if you were to take them there, the reaction is like, oh my God, what the fuck?
I wouldn't even say that though. I think as well, a lot of people struggle to get to that point because of things like their breathing and their bracing. Owen's hack squat, for example, he almost looked like he was going to fail from rep 4, but then he got like 11 reps. Yeah. And I said to him, I was like, why on earth is rep 4 that slow? Yeah. Like, it's because you're not breathing very well, you're not bracing very effectively, and you're not fully switched on. Like, after 4 reps, he was like, oh.
Niall threw up when he trained legs with us, and we didn't try and kill him or anything. It was literally a case where I think he failed a leg press, if I remember correctly. He might have failed a rep, and we were like, go again. Yeah, and then he got the next rep. Yeah. And it's like, if I spot Finn on a leg press, unless he's like a week out from a show, I know exactly when I'm going to probably have to jump in. There'll be a few times, like yesterday, for example, I said to him on a Smith press, "Oh, I thought you could have had that." I rarely ever say that, but that's because I've seen Finn do
And it was
thousands.
a low rep set.
Yeah, and it was thousands of sets, and that wasn't because of anything other than it was just a heavy set. But I think again, if like the amount of times I remember training with Comran in prep, and I jumped in on a leg press where I was like, why did I have to jump in? You had so many more.
Like
and he was ruined afterwards. And I said to him, like, this shows, like, your training is good, but there's a fine line between it being a little bit better, which is going to show on your physique.
The other day, Reese trained with Sanaya, replaced me.
Oh, here we go. And I said, fucking hell, during the leg press.
During the set,
it was a shit brace.
Oh, fucking hell. And then after the set, I was like, why are you being a pussy? Like, and you were like, what? And I was like, you shouldn't be saying fucking hell in the set. And you were like, yeah, I know. Like, it was because my brace wasn't good.
Yeah.
Like, little things like that. Like, I think for most people, like, during a set, if they go, oh, come on.
Yeah.
Like, for us, we're like, why are you wasting energy?
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be wasting that energy. If you're shouting, come on at yourself, or if you're going, oh, fucking hell, or on a leg press, if you take your hands off the handles and hold your legs,
I fucking hate that.
all you're doing is making it harder for yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you should just, all you should be thinking is like literally breathe, brace, get the next rep.
Yeah.
Breathe, brace, get the next rep.
At a time.
Like, and if you don't get the next rep, that should be because you've truly failed.
Yeah.
Like, it shouldn't be because your breathing wasn't good, or you're telling yourself it's harder than it is, or your bracing wasn't efficient. Like, like little things like that. I think we've again just learnt from years and years of training together and training really fucking hard. Like, if you think about back, we used to train harder than we do now because we're a little bit smarter with things now.
And also we're stronger. Like, if I tried to do what I did before, fucking hell.
Yeah, but also we just know.
Yeah.
Like, let's say for example, back in the day when we'd be on the hack at Pure Gym, like we know that's not really going to stimulate much growth. Like when you're just bottoming into the rep. Like, we trained harder then.
0 second eccentric, 1 rep max with 7 assisted reps.
Yes, they were hard sets.
That's really hard.
But they weren't very hypertrophic. Like, they weren't very good.
No. But then if you think about our lockdown sessions, if you were to think about that upper session that used to take us like 5 hours on a Saturday, like legitimately like minimum 4 hours, it would be like there'd be a lateral raise that was like probably the only nice exercise, 2 to 3 heavy barbell presses, probably like a barbell shoulder press,
access to
a barbell like incline, and then maybe a close grip or like a dumbbell. Like we used to set up a dumbbell press sometimes. We'd then do like a dumbbell row as a single arm row. We do like
barbell row,
a chest supported barbell row, and then we do like a set of weighted pull ups.
Or then maybe even shrugs.
Yeah, shrugs as well. We did some of them.
But if you think about that, in essence, as a whole session, it's not actually that much. Like if we were to go into Rotherham now, and do a lateral, 2 to 3 presses, a lat movement, an upper back movement, and a shrug, something like that, and then a bit of arms.
Yeah, no, it's not.
You'd be like, oh, it's a pretty long upper session, but it'd be like 2.5, 3 hours. But it's because it was. Everything was barbell based. Everything was having to be set up. Yeah,
but imagine
rather than
like
just going on a machine.
Setting like we used to literally have to craft the gym, move the benches around. We had different setups with blocks, and everything was like, right, we're doing this for this, and it was more so a case where like because it was barbell movements, you'd be ruined for a good amount of time.
I guarantee we'll have burnt like 2,000 calories every session.
Oh mate, I had that's when I used to have 370 grams of Frosties post workout. Like what's that? 300 carbs just from cereal.
We used to like.
That was one of the highest I've ever had my food really, because it was a case where we were on our feet. We didn't have like our phones didn't have service, so we just had phone, like songs downloaded
because it was during lockdown.
Yeah,
what else were we doing?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Like it's not as if like in the morning we were going out or in the evening we were doing something with like I think you were seeing Sanaya at that point, but like me and Shannon weren't doing anything because everywhere was closed. Yeah. So it was like all your energy for the day was just like,
fucking kill yourself. Let's just get into the gym.
They were good days.
They were, definitely. That. Yeah, they were. They were good fun. But yeah, I think it's one of those where, like, again, you just have to learn the basics of training hard and just getting after it. But the problem is and again, this is something that a lot of people probably don't realise. The standards, like, that we set, I'd do sets when I was on my own. And, like, I remember being at Ultraflex Leeds, like, bottling a set where, like, I'd fail a hack squat and I would legitimately, like, smash my head against a wall or, like, fucking hit a wall, like, not punch a wall, but I'd, like, slap my hand or I'd, like, headbutt my fucking phone to the point it sounds mental, but I'd get so frustrated because I'd be like, why am I fucking failing a hack that I should get a rep for?
I remember, like, back in the day when I was prepping for, or maybe even my off season before the prep for my first show. I think it was maybe when I was being coached by AJ or just before. I remember like my hack squat sets, I'd literally stare at a certain point at the wall and like every single rep like towards failure, I'd literally be like imagining horrible things happening if I didn't get the rep. Like whereas now I don't really need to do that because I've developed that ability to just make sure that I take it there,
Yeah.
and if I don't, I wouldn't. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like I make sure that it goes to that
Yeah.
point anyway. But back in the day, I'd have to really get amped up for it and
Yeah.
really get switched on, otherwise I wouldn't be able to perform well.
Yeah.
Whereas now, you still need that now and again, obviously on like really big demanding
Yeah.
movements. But like I remember doing that back in the day on like every set, and that's something like with Josh at the minute. He's like learning that,
Yeah.
and he's loving it,
Yeah.
which is great. But then also he's doing it on like, let's say his leg extension right at the end of the session.
Yeah,
And I'm like, you can still get everything out of his leg extension,
Yeah.
but actually just go into it a bit calmer,
Yeah.
and you'll probably get more out of it because
Yeah.
you're not going into it as amped up. You're not creating so much arousal before it to the point where you actually then make the set worse.
Yeah.
Like there's some exercises at certain points in the session where you actually benefit from just going in with a bit of a calmer approach.
Yeah.
But again, not everybody can distinguish that. It's like it's one or the other.
It's either like full on rage or like I'm going into
Going
it
in
with a
like
pussy.
it really chilled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's
there's
like
a
you need to
fine
find
line.
that balance.
I think you naturally go from like being extremely. I think the progression is like you don't realize, then you realize, oh, I actually get benefit from being mentally a bit more switched on.
Yeah.
Then it goes to like way too aroused, like stupidly inaccurate, but like aggressive. Then you almost kind of fine tune it to a point where it's like some exercises, yeah. And then I think as you get longer in your training, like the only exercise I really, really get amped up for is a hinge. Like that's the only one that I'm like, right, 100% need to be at it. Everyone else, I'm like probably like 70 to 80% more
Yeah.
like calm and composed. But there's still that level of arousal, but it's lesser. Just fucking move the weight,
Yeah.
you know, and I think eventually like it'll probably get to a point where I'm like so spot on with a hinge that I can probably go in at 70-80% calm and composed,
And
but
still
still
get
be
more
to the
out of
same
it,
standard.
yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's naturally like when I remember when we trained at like Pure or Lockdown, every exercise was like, right, get a fucking song on,
'Cause you've
get
got
your
to
head
get- yeah.
spot on, right, go in, be aggressive, right, move the weight. Where now, like, if we train push together, if I could train push, it would be a case of like, right, cool, big movement, top set, get yourself ready, but it wouldn't be like, let's fucking go,
Yeah.
you know, let's get
If
after
anything,
it.
I feel
you
like
know?
you just lose that accuracy
Yeah.
when there's movements where you don't need to go in at that level.
Mate,
Like-
if you're on a Smith press where it's a straight line, do you
Yeah.
really need to be like, okay, here we fucking go? You know?
Exactly. I think, but at some point in your training, you do need to learn that.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
otherwise, you don't know how to take it all the way there.
Yeah.
But yeah, like literally, like you were just saying, then it's like it is just an inverted U in terms of like performance and arousal. Like there is literally like evidence and loads of studies
yeah.
done on that
Yeah, yeah.
that inverted U graph, where it's basically like you'll find a certain peak point of arousal, and that's where your peak level of performance would be. And it's different for everybody, different for every exercise, for every individual. So like we've said before, like I can't really go into a hinge as amped up as you,
Yeah.
because I just like I did 2-3 weeks ago. Now I've fucked my back. So it's like, okay, that's not
Yeah.
smart. I need to be more calm and you know really just focus on getting tight if I'm going to go into that. Whereas like on a squat pattern,
The exact opposite.
yeah,
it's
I
literally-
can just get after it because
Yeah.
generally squat patterns feel decent for me.
Yeah.
Whereas for you, it's like you have to really think about your
Yeah.
execution. So again, it is dependent on that exercise, that individual. And usually I'd say like weaker body parts for most people, like you'd find that it'd be your weaker body parts where you're probably gonna have to think a little bit more
Yeah.
going into the set rather than just moving it.
Yeah.